Slugdog, we need you. Where's the content? Where's the Yorick? Nobody's saying this. Hey guys, it's me Slugdog here to talk today about the new builds, runes and resurgences of new items, setups and strategies with Yorick. And honestly, there's a lot to talk about. Firstly, let's start off strong. I didn't want to say this in the last video because it was quite recent, but I just want to throw it out now. But a lot of the old Yorick mains are back. Crikey and Ninetales have been swinging hard with a lot of Yorick content, and although I can't speak much on Crikey's videos, I don't watch them too much, I will say that Ninetales has some incredibly long educational videos, not only about jungle Yorick but also Yorick full stop. A lot of my viewers have been going setups that Crikey and Ninetales have made, and I highly recommend you guys to check them out big time. Send them a big old welcome from the dead and say like, I don't know, Slugdog shatter my bed or something, I don't know. Check them out. Anyways, with that being said, let's talk about the Maiden split build that Ninetales created and the talk of the town. There's many different assortments of the build, but I'll talk about the most reasonable and common one and the setup that Ninetales currently runs, starting off with the normal setup. The build starts off pretty simple, you know? Shojin Cleaver, Liandry's. Liandry's is a bit weird, but Shojin Cleaver, that's, you know, these are the best Yorick bruiser items in the game right now. Shojin gives really good damage, high AD, also increased 12% damage on all sources when you stack it up. This affects your abilities, ghouls and Maiden. It also has this nice effect where Shojin has this bug right now with the ability haste that it says it gives it on basic abilities, but it actually affects the ultimate as well. This high damage and interaction of ult make it generally more desirable than Cleaver first item, but Cleaver first item is still really good too. Speaking of Cleaver, just an amazing item on Yorick. Armor Cleave effect works with ghouls, so just a simple 4 ghouls hitting the enemy cleaves the enemy's armor by straight 20%. Really good stacks, amazing. Now, this is where the build gets pretty weird. I talked about Liandry's last patch review, but I missed a few things about Liandry's, and I want to explain why it's better than you might think, and why it's an overall just a decent item in Yorick. Firstly, the percent bonus damage. For every second in combat, you do up to 60% increased bonus damage. It's half the effect of Shojin, but 6% extra damage is not bad at all. This affects everything like Shojin does. It affects your magic damage from E, Maiden, ghouls, everything. But the real reason of why Liandry's is really alright is because of the burn effect. The burn effect is really good for a few reasons. Firstly, the magic damage it does makes it pointless to itemize armor. It makes it so that you do so much magic damage that you melt through a lot of bruisers who just try to stack armor against Yorick. Also, like I talked about earlier, the combined increased damage from Liandry's of 6% and 12% from Shojin makes it so that your E and Maiden and ghouls plus Liandry's burn start hurting a lot. Even if you don't necessarily have a lot of AP in this build, the magic damage of the percent health of E and Maiden really starts stacking up once you get this. But the real reason why Liandry's is so good on Yorick is because ghouls and Maiden applies Liandry's. This doesn't necessarily matter that much since when you engage with enemies you apply it once and it's basically on them for the entire fight, but it makes it so that when a single ghoul or Maiden just hits an enemy, you poke them for an extra up to 100 magic damage, even more if they build health. It just makes your perk hurt a lot more, and yeah, your continuous damage would probably be less than a bruiser item, but if you ever get into really pokey situations, then Liandry's is a very great option. It's still lacking in defensive options compared to other items like Death Stance or just a tank item, but it does make Maiden and ghouls more threatening and makes Yorick do a lot more mixed damage. These 3 items are core to Yorick and makes him a solid bruiser, do mixed damage, and also it can make just a few ghouls be able to dish out a lot of damage and just be really annoying. If you thought Liandry's was a weird purchase, it's about to get a whole lot worse. Static Shift recently received huge buffs that make it incredibly strong stat-wise. It also has an effect where if you kill an enemy minion, it does damage towards the rest of the wave, and if you kill a champion, there's a big lightning burst. This all culminates to a pretty decent wave fleet option on a cheap price tag, but there's a secret hidden effect that makes this item extra strong of Yorick. Whenever ghouls or Maiden last hits a minion, it will also proc that static shift proc, making ghoul pushes and Maiden release a lot faster than pushing. Even through this item alone and with other items that add a bit of damage to the ghouls like Cleaver and Shojin, the wave clear is really good, but this wave clear goes a mile faster with the next item. Hallowed Radiance is an MR tank item, basically an AP version of Sunfire, which burns enemies near Yorick. However, Hallowed Radiance similar to static shift, has a second effect where if an enemy dies, there is a small purple explosion that does magic damage to nearby enemies. But this combined with static makes it so that your Maiden and ghouls push so fucking fast, it makes Maiden split a much bigger threat than it usually would be. This full build is a Maiden split setup, and it makes it so that towards the mid and late game, Maiden becomes a powerhouse where you have to answer quickly or straight up win you games and get you towers instantly. The speed that it pushes is bonkers, and if Shojin Cleaver Liandry's in base numbers, it can sometimes even do so much damage that enemies trying to defend it will just die. With this build, Yorick himself is still really strong, having a lot of health in the build and solid bruiser potential provided you have ghouls in fight. Playing around Maiden split and your team in 5v5s allow a very strong potential win con, as well as just having higher chances of winning fights compared to plain splitting. With that being said, you may have already realized, okay, this is the Maiden split build, but why are the Maiden split items the last items in a build? And that's a solid argument, honestly. I'm gonna be realistic, it's not the greatest, especially if you don't understand Maiden release timings. This is a very heavy investment build that pretty much needs at least 2 to 3 cool items before you can start investing into Maiden split. If you invest into Maiden split straight away going static Hallowed Radiance, you'll be completely useless in teamfights and skirmishes. Just having static and Hallowed Radiance isn't really that good, it doesn't offer any utility in teamfights or anything. And if you can't hold your weight or store the enemies in fights, it makes the build useless. Once you get the full setup, Maiden split does become really strong, but at the same time, if the enemy is playing specific champions, it will just absolutely get shredded on this split. Don't get me wrong, it still has the effect of forcing someone to respond to Maiden, but having some like Tristana with a Bloodthirst to just deal with it in 3 auto attacks and just placing your ult on an 80-second cooldown, or just having the enemy like a Camille Trinity just already slip pushing and then clearing out your mana for free can really make this build feel useless. This build is incredibly complex though, but it is worth trying out. It's essentially a build where you play to release Maiden to push and work together your team to stall the enemy so that you can split and get your objectives. That way you can 5v5 still, but you have this threat to play around and it can work out really well. Because even if you don't necessarily win the fight, Maiden will be able to get you stuff in return, and if you win the fight, it's a 2-for-1 special where Maiden gets to split and get objectives for you, and you can do whatever you want after you win a fight. Honestly, the reason why I didn't want to talk about this build is because there's so much that can go right and wrong, and this is ultimately my problem of the build. Its inconsistencies are just way too much. One of the biggest inconsistency is the fact that you're playing solo queue, and fights can become really lopsided, and your team would choose to ignore to play around Maiden because they don't understand it. Furthermore, if you don't know how to play around the macro of Maiden splitting, when to release it, and understanding a good timing to play for it, it's just not going to be able to get to the tower in time before the fight you may be joining ends. And even still, like I said earlier, it's just inconsistent against certain champions. ADCs, any bruises running lifesteal setups, and mages running Liandry's, it will just absolutely shred him super quickly. I highly recommend watching Ninetales on how he releases Maiden as well as his gameplays in order to learn more about it. I'll be playing this build on stream as well for the next few days as of the release of the video, just to demonstrate Maiden release power, and who knows, maybe I'll make a more in-depth video about it. Now the next setup I want to talk about is the Ninetales setup, which I want to quickly breeze over. Ninetales plays Yorick jungle, and instead of Shojin first, he opts to go Profane first into the 3 core items, but he goes Hallowed Radiance instead of Static. It is also worth noting that he's experimenting a lot recently with different setups, but essentially Profane, Shojin into Cleaver Liandry's, and Hallowed Radiance is the main idea. Hallowed Radiance allows for a very tanky option, as well as enabling the Maiden split, and he has a lot of independent power with the Profane and Shojin. However, there is one interesting choice within the setup that is very powerful that I'm going similar to this. Ninetales runs Profane Haja with a very specific rune, Hail of Blades. Now this is absolutely vital, as this combo of Hail of Blades, Profane Haja, and Yorick is genuinely one of the most overpowered setups that Yorick can run. This is pretty old tech, many Yorick mains already know of this, but I've been playing a lot more recently since First Strike has been nerfed. Conqueror is still an incredibly powerful rune and nothing's changed about it. However, I did feel the late game to be a bit lacking with the Validity Yorick because you one-shot the enemies most of the time anyways, and you don't even get into long fights. The early game of Conqueror is still really powerful, but I just found that I wanted something else towards the late game. I wanted something that would give me power and I could feel it. and that's where Hail Blades comes in really useful. Hail Blades is a simple rune. It has a 20-second cooldown and becomes active when you auto attack an enemy. For the next 3 auto attacks, you gain increased attack speed. Note that auto attack resetters like Yorick is also affected by the attack speed, and also it gives you 1 extra auto attack of the increased attack speed. This rune makes your early game really powerful, sometimes even better than Conqueror, giving the opportunity for better trades from just straight level 1. Not only that, it scales like an absolute demon, turning a Yorick combo for auto Q Profane much more faster for a few reasons. When you auto Q Profane, the combo is a lot faster because firstly, the auto attack already comes up quicker due to the increased attack speed, but also your Q is an auto attack resetter that is also affected by the attack speed increase of Hail Blades, and thirdly, Profane's animation comes out based on the attack speed of your character, and because you have the increased attack speed from Hail Blades, it comes out almost instantly. This allows you to deal up to 2000 damage in less than a second in certain late game scenarios. It's by far Yorick's most powerful burst rune, and gives Yorick as well a lot of individual agency to fight back, something that is very often his biggest weakness. Yorick is innately a ghoul and maiden reliant champion. If I had to say, it's around 50-50 between him and ghouls, and more often than not, honestly, it's around 70 ghouls and 30% of himself. Hail Blades allows him to have enough damage by himself with the high AD combined with lethality to maul enemies so quickly and do so much damage that it's like honestly 80 Yorick and 20% ghouls. Don't get me wrong, Conqueror, First Strike and Comet are still better for ghoul damage and for different situations. Conqueror being better in longer fights, especially early game, First Strike at making money and breaking stamens as well as having good burst. Comet still is the best poke in terms of runes, but Hail Blades fills out this niche of making Yorick individually really powerful and validating that weakness of him being weak without ghouls and Maiden. I highly recommend playing it again, especially with the thought of Yorick being so strong and it being so synergistic with Profane Hydra. With that being said, let's address the patch 14.13 changes quickly. There's only 4 changes I really want to talk about that are quite important, so let's speed past them. The first one is the Scanner nerf. The Scanner nerf is actually massive. This mana increase to his Q is really nice as he spams it constantly lane and is his main damage ability. Unfortunately, Fimbulwinter is part of his main build, so it won't matter once he gets his first or second back, but in the early game, before that back, it really does hurt him a bit since this is a big trading tool. Oh, and also he lost 1/3 of his Q damage. Zac got a 1% nerf on his Q healing. Wait, what the fuck? This is literally nothing. What the hell? Who told me to talk about this change? I'm firing your ass right now. From this very moment, you're fired. Opportunity got a small buff with an increase in 50 movement speed after you kill someone. It may seem small, but getting 200 movement speed after you kill someone is actually pretty decent. It was kinda unnoticeable before, but now it's gonna be a little bit better and work well with the lethality Hail Blade setup I was talking about earlier. The next changes I want to talk about are Electrocute and Dark Harvest. Now, I'll be completely honest, they both suck. Comet and First Strike literally do the exact same job but better. But I'd argue that the big brother in the domination tree, Hail Blades, is 10 times more hotter and sexier. Slugdog, could you try the new setups please? Fine. You can find the videos on Slugdogger channel and check them out, you know. I'll be uploading gooder games on this channel back again because I think that it's just interesting. For example, because I talked about the Maiden Split build, I'll probably be releasing a few more Maiden Split videos, some gameplays and more discussions about it. Oh yeah, I'm going to Korea in December. See ya!